Welcome to the brand new British Eventing show on the EquiRatings Eventing Podcast. Well, it is the start of a new year. A new season is fast approaching, and we have got a really, really exciting new show to get you in the mood for the 2022 eventing season. And I'm going to start by welcoming my very special guest. She is going to be on these British Eventing show. It is none other than CEO Helen West. Helen, it is good to see you. Happy New Year and all that jazz. I feel like we can't say that anymore. But it is a new year and it feels like we're in for an absolute cracker.
It is, Nicole. It is a new season. I keep saying to people, Happy New Year, and thinking, crikey, we're halfway through January. January's nearly disappeared. Can I keep saying that? And I sort of think, if I haven't seen them already, I will say Happy New Year. And it is still January, so I'm allowed to at this stage. But absolutely, couldn't agree more with you. We have some really, really exciting things ahead of us, and very much looking forward to the 2022 season.
It's like seeing all of our eventing friends in October at the last event of the season and saying Happy Christmas. Everybody thinks we're mad, but, you know, it is a real community and we miss them over the winter months. So let's start off because we have got a brand new British Eventing show coming out every month over the next year. And I think it's really important for us to talk about why we're doing it, what we want to achieve, and kind of the vision for this show, because it is so much about the members and their voice.
Absolutely. Yes, Nicole. For me, it is wanting there to be a face to British eventing. I am a person, the team, everybody there, every single individual is a person. And I don't want it to be a faceless organisation. This is a fantastic opportunity to, for everybody to share with us. See behind the scenes a little bit, see what we're thinking and what the plans are for the future, and to have a channel to communicate that to the members, because that is so, so important. And I am conscious that, it's something we've come in for a bit of criticism for in the past, not having communicated enough. It's something we know we need to do more of. And I really feel that this is a fantastic way of getting that communication channel out there.
Transparency, isn't it? The magic T word of just making sure that, the governing body is there for the members. We all love the sport. You can never, ever, ever doubt the amount of love and passion that we all have for eventing. And ultimately, it's about driving towards that common goal at the end of the day. Let's talk a bit about what we have got in store for 2022, because there are some really exciting new initiatives. There have obviously been, a huge number of challenges over the last couple of years, just looking at COVID and the restrictions and the uncertainty that gives competitors, organisers, sponsors, everybody. So everyone is in the same boat from that respect. So we're both feeling new year. All of the excitement, all of the hope is there. Let's start by talking about some of those new initiatives, because we'll start with the BE80s, the grassroots championships at Bramham. And that is unbelievably cool. How amazing for BE80 competitors to be able to ride on the hallowed turf at Bramham. Something really big to aim for.
Isn't it just, it is so exciting. I'm fortunate enough to have ridden at Bramham numerous times in the past as a young rider. The Young Rider Championships obviously have always been at Bramham, and it is wonderful. It is such a wonderful venue, and to give our grassroots competitors the opportunity to have a championship there is just something that is so exciting. And I really, really hope that the hype, people will want to buy in and want to be a part of that. I'm incredibly grateful to Nick Pritchard at Bramham for facilitating us there, and hugely grateful to NAF, who have come on board as sponsors of that BE80 National Championship. And I have every confidence, I've worked with NAF in the past, and they will really, really go the extra mile to make it extra special for those competitors. Yeah, it's definitely a go-to destination for 2022.
It's very fun. And a cross-country course designed by Ian Stark, built by David Evans. I mean, Ian Stark is a legend. He's designed all the way up to 5-star European championships, and he'll be designing the course. And David Evans, who built the course in Tokyo. I mean, it's such an incredible opportunity. And I guess that kind of builds in all about the new membership levels. Just give us an overview as to why we have got new membership in British Eventing this year. Absolutely. And what the aims are for them.
Sure. So, there is no denying over the last 6 years, we have seen a decline in membership. don't get me wrong, COVID came along 2020 and certainly didn't help matters. But even prior to that, it was on a downward trajectory in terms of the membership, and most specifically the grassroots membership. So one of the first things when I came into post was, to sort of sit back and look long and hard at that, and there's lots of reasons for that, I have no doubt. There is a increasingly sort of professional, unaffiliated market, which is something we can probably talk about a little bit later. But cost has consistently been cited as one of the reasons, one of the barriers to sort of entry level into the sport. It has always seemed disproportionate that, if you're a grassroots rider and you're perhaps going to compete 5 times a year at B90 level, it seems unjust that you should be paying the same membership as one of the professional riders who's, competing perhaps 5 horses every day, every weekend, all the way through the season. It just seems disproportionate. So one of my sort of objectives early on was to try and find a way of bringing the cost of an introductory membership down to sort of help get people into the sport, to get them in at the entry level, which is very much the pyramid that then supports the whole of the rest of the sport. So it wasn't without its challenges. I was slightly constrained to, in the short term, 3 levels of membership, which is the sort of architecture that's set up within the system. So initially we have the introductory, the standard and the premier level, and the traditional day passes have been replaced by a pay-as-you-go system, which is very straightforward. It's £30 for a horse, £30 for a rider, job done, and then you pay your £15 top up each time you compete. So if you only compete 3 or 4 times, it's a very cost-effective way of doing it. The introductory level, which is just for B80 and 90, works out, I think it's 26% cheaper than it was. And it's actually 33% cheaper for new members coming into the sport. So, I really, really hope that will encourage people to become a member and to get involved. And, there's lots of things that we've got planned to add value to that membership. And I really want to create a sense of inclusivity and a sense of community. Eventing is fun. That is, the vast majority, well, everybody in it. I'm not going to just say the vast majority, even the very, very pro guys. I would like to think they have fun as well. But, we need to remember that. And, I want people to come and be part of that community, that family, and enjoy it.
The fun word. I love that. And I think we all need to sometimes pinch ourselves just a little bit, because everything gets caught up in, there's so much stress and worry and anxiety and everything around whether you're competing as an organizer. But ultimately you've got to build that through, because that builds the community, it builds your passion, and it's a knock-on effect. Am I right in saying that nearly 75% of the membership compete at B100 level and below? So that is 3/4 of British Eventing members.
Absolutely, it is. Over the last 6 years, Nicole, 73%, nearly 75% of our members never compete over B100 level. That is a huge, huge figure. So, we have to be looking at ways to not only welcome new members in at that level, but to keep the retention and to, provide those members with value and with opportunities.
Let me just come out and ask you then, because it feels like it's the elephant in the room. Why should people affiliate to British Eventing and not compete unaffiliated? Like, what is the difference?
Okay, so look, unaffiliated has been and always will be the feeder into the sport. It's the same in all 3 disciplines, and that will always serve a very, very crucial purpose. I think where, British Eventing has certainly found, sort of very real competition now is within some of the very structured series. The unaffiliated has become very professional. And it's almost sort of coming out now in direct competition to the governing body, with the sort of structured series culminating in a championship, a lot more money on offer. It's all becoming more professional. Where I struggle a little bit with it, and I will absolutely say now, this isn't all unaffiliated events, but some certainly would not have the same safety provisions by any stretch of the imagination that British eventing events would. So in terms of, the veterinary cover, the medical cover, they're not running to BE standards. They're not running under BE regulations. Very often there may be a vet on call. There may be a doctor on call. They're not on site. And this, and that is something that, it is a risk. And unfortunately, as everybody knows, it is a high risk sport. Accidents do happen. And unfortunately, until you've been on the other side of the fence and seen it, on a very, very bad day, I don't think you necessarily appreciate quite how crucial that is. In my previous role as an organizer, I was very much sort of and probably more predominantly as a course designer, because I tend to be out on the cross-country course. I have, sadly had to deal with equine and unfortunately one human fatality. And it's not until you've seen that you realise how slick the BE serious incident management protocols are. When those guys have to launch into action, it is very, very efficient. It is very slick. And I hope nobody ever has to go through that. But I think it's something that, our members can absolutely have assurance that all those measures are in place. The veterinary provision, the medical, those courses have all been signed off. Those fences have all been secured in the proper fashion. And you are, mitigating the risk. It is a safer sport. Those are the big things for me. And, in terms of the tangible technology, the investment in making the sport safer all the time, and the recording of all the data. So the MERs, the minimum eligibility requirements, just things from a medical perspective, concussion, monitoring those, and actually having a proper process in place where people, if they fall and suffer a concussion, there is a 21-day stand down and you have to be signed back on. But it's keeping tabs of people to make sure they stay safe.
You hit the nail on the head when you say, there is a risk associated with our sport. And there is, with life in general. And so therefore, everybody at British Eventing and the governing body make the sport as safe as it can possibly be. And those protocols that go in place are pretty rigorous. They're there for a reason. They've been put in place by some seriously well-qualified people that all care about eventing as much as everybody competing and as much as everybody involved in organising the sport. And so it is actually very interesting to kind of get that perspective of that is the difference. That is the clear difference between unaffiliated competition. And I think you make a fair point. You're not saying that every unaffiliated competition doesn't do things to the exact letter of the book as they should, but it makes a very, very good point. And you can see where the costs are incurred. And, I've sat on the fence as a commentator and as a cross-country controller, having trained, very, very hard to be in that position. And when things do go horribly wrong, when you see how well it works and how good the hands that you are in and how experienced they are, how qualified they are, how much equipment they have with them, and the speed at which they are able to do their job, it is absolutely extraordinary. And it terrifies me actually to think if something happened that you wouldn't have all of those things on hand to be able to make it as safe as we can. So from that perspective, I think it's very interesting. From the risk perspective, EquiRatings have worked with British Eventing for a number of years, and it's something that we're obviously really, really passionate about. It also provides that accountability as well. And I think we're all looking to improve. Everybody goes into a competition with a different aim in mind. They might be in competition with themselves. They might be wanting to win the class. They might be just wanting to go and have a really fun day out with their family and the pony that, goes out every couple of times in the season. They have a lovely time. But whatever it is, you want to do it safely and you want to enjoy it. And we all want to be better. And part of that is being accountable for all of our experience and aims for the future. And
absolutely. And on that, Nicole, I would also just add, I think in the society that we are living in now, in terms of horse welfare and social license, we have to be very, very careful. we exist within our equestrian bubble, and we all know, the care and attention and, the love that all of our horses get, and, the way that they're treated like kings and queens. But you have to remember to the public and those that aren't involved in our bubble, it is a very different perception. And this is something, I think we've seen certainly last year, especially with, sort of modern pentathlon and, the images that we saw at Tokyo, and now the sort of subsequent removal of the riding phase from the modern pentathlon. We have to protect the image of our sport, and we have to be really, really careful about that. And that's something that when it's under the, the sort of regulated body, we can be very much controlling, or not controlling, that's the wrong word. We can be feeding out, educating in a positive way. And we have to be very careful that we don't end up, in a scenario where, God forbid, something happens, there is a horse fatality at an unaffiliated that isn't dealt with well. That affects the whole sport. Joe Blogg's public aren't going to realise that, they see it as eventing. That is just eventing. They don't understand what's affiliated, what's unaffiliated. We just have to be very mindful of that. And, some of the videos and things that get put on social media of, some really nasty falls and horses flipping. And we have to be really, really careful about that. It's, it's something that is only going to become increasingly on our radar. And the same, can I be honest, in terms of, our officials, everybody within the sport from a safeguarding perspective, the training that the officials have had, and another one that's quite big for me is the sort of level playing field, a fair sport and a clean sport. Obviously under the regulated body, we do operate a strict anti-doping policy. That isn't there in the unregulated market. So, you could be competing alongside a horse that's, on 4 buttes a day to keep it sound enough to go and compete. Is that fair? Is that the right thing for the horse? There's some really, really sort of big fundamental things there that we just, again, just going back to the advantages, if you like, of being under that British eventing umbrella, you're getting a very level playing field, a fair and a clean sport. And I think that's really important for people to understand as well.
I love the reference of social responsibility almost. I think that is something that we so easily overlook. And actually, it's all fine when everything's fine. But actually, the moment something's not fine, it's pretty darned uncomfortable and damaging. And it can have really, really long-lasting effects. All of those things added up. When you take into account the cost differences as to why affiliated eventing is more expensive, you can see why. There is so much that you get for your money as a member that you perhaps don't always see. And it is, I think, one of the things that we wanted to talk about and be very open about is nobody's saying, we want the sport to be as affordable as possible, but this is why it costs. This is what you're getting.
Absolutely. And again, I think it's a sort of a little bit of a, common misconception that organisers have to pay an awful lot of money to British eventing. Yes, of course, they do pay an affiliation fee, an event levy, so per entry. But I think it would, it's good for people to understand, it's £5.25 per entry. So of a whole entry, you're normally talking in the realms between sort of £80 and £100. £5.25 comes to British eventing. And for that is the provision of the British eventing steward, the British eventing technical advisor, a qualified British eventing scorer. You've then obviously got, access to all of the British eventing equipment, the stopwatches, clocks. In terms of the frangible technology, there's an awful lot when you start adding it up. And in terms of us, obviously training our officials, getting them to that point, it does, I genuinely don't think it's bad value for money from an organiser's perspective. And having been in that role for, 8 years previously, it's interesting because for me, with the business model that I was running previously, I always stuck to running British eventing. I didn't go down the unaffiliated route just because I had a very clear strategy to build up the standard, the profile of Bicton previously, and I wanted to protect the ground as much as I could to get the going as good as I possibly could. And I had a very sort of long-term objective of, I wanted to run the top level of the sport there. And, last year was fortunate to obviously have that opportunity running a 4-star and a 5-star, but that wouldn't have happened. And I genuinely believe this if, we'd carried on the sort of path of running 2 or 3 unaffiliated, everything once a month, having schooling out there. We would never have got to where I wanted that venue to go.
It makes a really interesting point in terms of your experience, because actually you wear quite a lot of hats, Helen, if I'm honest, in so much as you've got experience as a rider. You've ridden up to top level, you've been an organizer, which I think is key. So rider, organizer, course designer. You've designed courses up to the 4-star level as well. I know safety cross country, we've just talked about quite a bit of that. That's something you're massively passionate about. So let's talk about you for a second, because obviously you've been thrown into CEO of British Eventing, but your background, what was it about eventing that really captured your imagination those years ago?
I look back and my parents were not horsey. My dad has never sat on one in his life. My mum, to be fair, a million years ago had ridden, but when I came along, they had no association with horses at all. In fact, they met playing tennis. They were both very, very good tennis players, and I was supposed to play tennis. And when I was little, all I wanted to do was ride. And I was very fortunate. They facilitated that and sort of humoured me, let me go along for local riding school, have some lessons, and that passion has just always been there, and it has always remained. And they, I was incredibly fortunate that they supported me through those early years, and and enabled me to do what I did, sort of British junior teams, young riders. And I went on and rode at Burley in, I think it was 2002 maybe. So yes, it's always been a huge passion of mine. And along the way, I was very, very fortunate to have some very supportive owners that obviously then got on board and, were very loyal, stayed with me, pretty much through all of my career. And even now, I still have phone calls from them saying, "Oh, could you just take this young horse in? Could you just start this one off for me?" I would love to, but sadly, I really, really now do not have time. And then I guess, I sort of reached I suppose it was early 30s, and I had a bit of a crossroads. I'd become, it is a really tough sport. It's really mentally and physically, it is a tough sport. And much as we all, absolutely love it, it is very, very few who remain at that very elite level.
Yeah.
And I remember one day I was in the start box, sort of set off cross country that day, and I really didn't want to. I was riding a horse intermediate, and I didn't feel it should be going intermediate. But I didn't want to upset the owner, is the honest truth. I didn't want to sort of be honest and say, actually, this probably shouldn't be competing at this level. They paid the bills. I had a mortgage, had bills to pay. Anyway, I set off that day and had quite a bad fall, actually, about the third last fence, rotational fall, sort of, the horse landed very heavily, thankfully not on me. The horse was fine. I was very battered and bruised, and it really made me reassess things. And I sort of limped back to the lorry and just about managed to drive back down to Devon. And I got home and bless her, my mum, who was alive then, had the Horse and Hound open, and she had the advert for jobs. And they were looking for a manager at Bicton. And I said, "Mum, don't be ridiculous. I've never organised anything in my life." She was like, "Well, you organised my 70th birthday party. You'd be fine. Apply." So, crikey, all right. At that point in my life, I was ready I just wanted to be able to enjoy the sport without the pressure of having to pay the bills and be in a situation that I had found myself in that day. So anyway, I did apply. It was a very rigorous interview process. And anyway, eventually I was offered the role. So I went from obviously competing quite a lot of horses full time to a much, much smaller string. That first year I started at Bicton, I think I still had 4 horses that I was out and about competing with. But I then very quickly got into the course design side of things, because to be honest, it started off as an exercise. I wanted to be able to save the estate money. because at that point, they were paying a lot of money to have somebody come in, design and build the courses. And I was thinking to myself, I'm sure I could do that. I've risen to a very good level and, I'm interested in that. And I got into it and I got more and more into it. And obviously went down the B sort of accreditation route and then the FEI. And that's become now a real passion of mine. And that gives me, I guess, that adrenaline rush that I used to get from the competing. And it was the first thing in my life after actually competing where I felt I had that real adrenaline and that buzz. And that is a little bit of a drug. And that's something that, and I just love, it just is inherently sort of there in me. So, yes. And then obviously in that role, I became an organizer. We went from, when I started, Bitchin just ran one. It just had a grassroots event at that point in 2013. And I very quickly was like, right, come on, we can get this back up. And they used to run advanced and come on, we can do this. And we went from one event a year to 3 events a year, including, an international, and ran up to 3-star level. And then last year, with COVID throwing such a curveball and initially Bramham not happening, well, we put our name in the hat to run the 4-star replacement for Bramham. And that was just phenomenal, and that was the first 4-star I've designed over here. I have designed 4-star in Ireland. And that, I think, really put it on the map. And then really, to be honest, on the back of that, obviously, I had quite a few people come to me when Burley sadly announced that they weren't going to be able to run in 21, sort of saying, come on, we know you could do it. And I was like, yes, we could, but we've just run a really brilliant 4-star. I'm kind of moving on into a different role now. Is it the right thing to do? But there was such enthusiasm and such desire there for us to do it. And that was an amazing example of when everybody comes together and works collaboratively off the same hymn sheet, what can be achieved. Because honestly, when I first looked at it, I thought there is no way we will ever get this past the FEI. No way. But I'll be honest, we had 3 or 4 key people that really, really helped drive that. We did the homework. We put together a very, very compelling presentation. And when we did go to the FEI, in all honesty, they had nowhere to go because it was it was so slick. Everybody was so strong on that hymn sheet. And it was yes. And we were like, oh my God, now we've actually got to do it.
Yeah, it happened. The power of working together. It was a great example of, what can be done when everybody works towards that common goal. And not everybody agrees with everybody all of the time, but ultimately we all do love eventing. And if we work together to make it happen, amazing things can happen. I know you and I spoke actually in the build up to the Bitchin 4-star. And, it had been a whirlwind to make that happen. It was a brave decision by the team. And you were very, very brave as a course designer. And I think that absolutely paid off. But there were, you didn't just go and say, we're going to put on a 4-star. You absolutely put on a 4-star that we haven't seen for some time and that everybody spoke about. From your event organisers sort of experiences, what are the challenges that face organisers? Because there are so many different ideas, different business models, different challenges coming around. What was the hardest thing for you as an organiser with a vision?
Honestly, the hardest thing for me was actually being given the opportunity to showcase what I felt and I always believed we could do and we could pull off. Because I had this vision, I had these wonderful ideas, I knew, or I was pretty confident that if I got, the ground right, the courses right, the experience for the competitors right, they would come and they would vote with their feet, which they did. What I probably found the most frustrating was, at that point, then there not being an opportunity for us to be able to run an international, not being an opportunity for us to then run a 4-star. And, it's ironic that it really, to be honest, took a pandemic to come along to provide me with that opportunity to showcase what we can do. And that's something, I've gone into this role now. I don't want any, young up and coming organisers to sort of feel that door is shut, because it can feel a little bit closed door. And I don't want people to feel that because I experienced that myself. And I think it's really important that, we need to be welcoming new forward-thinking, organisers into the sport, as well as maintaining, we have the most wonderful, wonderful venues out there. We have, organising committees who are so, so passionate and give up so much time for the sport. And they absolutely, there is a place for everybody. It's all a balance, and I think we need to be, careful that we don't become so protectionist that there are no opportunities for new people coming in, because actually I don't think that's the right thing in terms of event standards and in terms of, actually offering the best possible service and product to our membership. But we also have to be mindful of keeping the, the integrity and the authenticity of the sport. And I don't ever want to see, eventing become completely facilities based, for example, in this country. I don't think that's the right thing for the sport at all. And I don't think that's what the membership want. You've only got to look at, the grassroots guys now, and, those aspirational venues are really, really, they're a massive draw. We all want that photo, with a big stately home in the background. Mm-hmm. And that is important. But I don't think that's the be all and end all. I don't think that's the only thing. The sport has evolved. Horses are worth an awful lot of money, in terms of the footing, the facilities. There is all a balance there. And, I think that's the difficult thing to strike. And that's one of the things, in this country, we have so much variety, so much choice, which is absolutely brilliant. It's probably stronger in that respect than any other country, but it's identifying that, and it is, ensuring the sustainability of that. Because it is very much more difficult for your greenfield one-off event sites to make it stack than it is for, a site that has permanent facilities there that are probably utilised for numerous other purposes. When you're bringing everything into a greenfield site from scratch, when you're hiring everything from, dressage boards, show jumps, you name it, financially, those organisers are, bear the burden, because it is a lot more expensive. And that's where, again, it's an interesting one, because I've always felt, funnily enough, that, it would be better for organisers to have, say, a flexible window that they could set their own entry fees, because they could be more in line with, the business models that they're running. Actually, they can price accordingly, and it would empower them to actually, I think, potentially be in a better place to be able to charge what they need to. There's some organisers that I think would absolutely think that that is the right, we should move forward with that. There's some organisers that absolutely don't. They feel it should be the same for everybody, one price for all. And I think, we're seeing increasing challenges with that, just because of the very nature of the different types of business models. And I genuinely actually think that the membership understand that. And, I've had some really, really useful conversations with the rider working groups who work with British Eventing. And we have a grassroots rider working group and a novice to advanced rider working group. And they really understand, those differences, and they're saying to me, look, if we were entering, a one-off event that happens once a year, we would happily pay a bit more to go to that, because we can completely understand why it's costing the organizer more. So let us pay a little bit more for that. But if we're going somewhere that runs 4 times a year and has, we'd expect that to be slightly more reflected in the price. And I actually think if the membership understand that, I think, my personal belief is that they would be happy with that, rather than it just being one set policy for everything, because one size doesn't fit all in this sport.
No, and you make a good point on that. And I think it comes back to what we were saying earlier. There are so many advantages to British Eventing, and the policies and the research and the support and experience and knowledge and all of those things. And also it's striking that balance with allowing organisers their freedom. Like you were saying, you never want people to feel like it's a closed shop, that things are prescribed to them in a certain way. And it's being able to strike the balance. Now, realistically, as much as we would all love to, we will never please everybody. Nobody will ever please everybody, regardless.
I'm learning that one very quickly.
Yes, I can imagine. And ultimately, there will always be some things that suit some people more and other people that don't necessarily agree. More on that in a second, I think, because that's an important point. But going back to role, what led you to leave Bicton? You obviously had a very, very successful career there, to jump in at the helm of British Eventing.
I ask myself that every night, Nicole. No, genuinely. Okay, I'd been there. It was my 8th year, and I'd taken it from, running 1 horse trials up to novice level, a couple of show jumping shows and a couple of dressage competitions to, ultimately we ended up running, eventing, 4-star, 5-star, show jumping, horse of the year show qualifiers. The last year I was there, we ran a 2-week show jumping tour. I think we gave out about £60,000 prize money. I felt like I'd done everything I could do there. I'll be really honest. I think it's interesting because, one of my frustrations was that I felt that I probably was never going to get the opportunity to be able to put on that elusive 4-star or 5-star. And that had probably sown the seed that I felt I couldn't do any more there. And therefore I needed to find the next challenge. And it's kind of ironic that it ended up being British Eventing and potentially that being one of the reasons why I was feeling like I was never going to be given that opportunity. So yeah, it was a strange time actually, because it all happened at the same time. So I'd sort of gone through the interview process for this CEO role for BE, and then the 4-star happened, and then I got given the opportunity, the 5-star, and it was like, oh my God, this is all just But my mind was made up at that point, and I felt that I could make a difference. I felt that, what I'd achieved at Bicton, I mean, I appreciate it's a drop in the ocean compared to, this whole organisation and the national governing body, et cetera, but I genuinely felt I could make a difference, and I wanted to try and be able to help. And I wanted to try and be able to get the sport into a healthier place, back on track, and, to be able to move it forward for the future. So that was why I did it.
And what about now? We're 6-8 months on. Last summer would have been a complete whirlwind. I've absolutely no doubt about it. You add in, I think your first day on the job was Tokyo, winning medals, and then of course there was the Europeans and everything else thrown into the mix. The challenges are well documented. You've been very, very open with saying that. What is the vision though? Where would you like to see British Eventing in, say, 12 months or 3 years time, 10 years time for you?
A sustainable sport for all. So, it's ironic, that first day, oh my gosh, Olympic gold team, individual silver, and then, like a month later, clean sweep at the Europeans. And then, you walk into head office on the Monday and, those guys in there, honestly, I used to be sat on the outside looking in thinking, oh, for goodness sake, all those people at head office, what are they doing? Blah, blah, blah. Why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they? I cannot emphasize enough. It is constant firefighting in there. It is very, very challenging. Those guys all deserve a medal, honestly, in terms of what, the challenges that they are having to deal with, which I guess largely are due to the systems. If the systems all worked, it would make life so much easier, but they don't. So there's an awful lot of manual validation of everything. And if you think in terms of the number of entries that we take, that we process through a year, the MERs, qualifications, medical suspensions, reverse qualifications, an awful lot of this is still having to be done manually, and they are snowed under. When the phones are ringing and people are wanting, to sort out issues on the phone, you've got all the cases coming in via email. They literally, it's very, very difficult for them to come up for breathing space. And, moving forward, I want to improve that. I want to make that better. I want the systems to be more efficient. It's no secret. The IT has, over the last 6 years, depleted our reserves to a very, very vulnerable level. And that has to stop. Moving forward, we have a plan to build those reserves back up. There is a roadmap sort of out of the model of the IT that we are currently sort of constrained with. It's a very, very complicated architecture. Those guys that are in there, I take my hat off to them, how they keep it all running and keep this bit talking to that bit. And it is so, so complicated. We need to simplify it. We really, really need to simplify it, keep it simple, stupid. And moving forward, it's efficiencies. We just need to be more efficient about the use of time, resource. We need to build up the reserves. We need to get into a financially stronger position to then be able to put back into the sport. And that's the hard thing for me at the moment, because I'm all about the sport. And I really, that's my main driver in life. And I feel, short term, I've just got to stabilize it. I've just got to get it back on track before I'm then in a position to be able to start putting money back into the sport and doing the exciting things. But in the meantime, there's lots of things that we can do. There's lots of initiatives that we are obviously rolling out. We need to provide, greater opportunities for all of our members. At every level. I would like championships and leagues for everybody. I'd like to be able to get training back up and running. I think that it's really important that as a national governing body that, we have a training provision. Those members coming in for the first time, that's a really, really vital component for them. And I want to build that sense of community and that sense of camaraderie and being a part of it. And, there's so many wonderful things about the sport, and it's trying to make that accessible, I guess, for as many as possible. So I guess the next 12 months, really, it is getting us financially into a, much stronger position. It is then having that strategy to roll out the training, have a training strategy for officials, for coaches, and not most importantly, but very importantly for me, for the members, so that we're providing opportunities for them. There's so many things that we do well in this country. This country leads the sport in so many ways, and I want to remain in that position. I want our officials to be the best officials in the world. I want our courses to be the best courses in the world. What we saw last year, the pathway that we put in place to get those horses to Tokyo was absolutely, it was second to none. I mean, look at the results we got. That's something we do here. I do genuinely believe, better than pretty much every other nation. And it's very important that we keep that mantle. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future in terms of, eventing staying within the Olympics. Obviously, it's there for Paris. At this point, it's, we're safe for LA. Beyond that, it is a battle. It is a battle, and I think it's a risk. I think it could.
That then brings back to your earlier point that actually we all have that kind of responsibility to the sport as well, and the importance of it can't be underestimated. I think the point for me there is that transparency that we spoke about at the very top of this show. Things aren't perfect, and that there are a lot of people working very, very hard for a common goal, which is to drive eventing within our country and to give opportunities and to make it the best that it can possibly be. And we've already said, when people drive towards a common goal, even if they don't all necessarily agree along the way, amazing things can happen because there is so much knowledge and experience and passion and love for the sport. The one thing I would say is there have been some pretty vocal negativity around a lot of things. How hard is that to deal with? Because just speaking as somebody who takes things quite personally, some of the things that fly around, social media is amazing, but sometimes it can be really quite scary.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean that, I will be honest, Nicole, that's something that has shocked me. I always think I'm a pretty positive person, glass half full. I try and keep a positive outlook, but my gosh, I can't begin to tell you how demoralizing it has been. I can assure everybody we are absolutely trying our best. Everybody at British Eventing is committed to the sport and to making it better and to putting on, the best possible service for the membership. There are challenges. It is nobody's fault, and that's what gets me, and that's what upsets me. It is nobody's fault at British Eventing that, right here, right now, we are where we are. This is what I have inherited. This is what those guys are doing their damnedest to make the best of. It's none of their fault, and they're humans. They are human beings, and some of the vitriol on social media has just been, it's been really tough. I mean, I'll be honest, I actually have taken myself off social media. I'm no longer on Facebook because I just genuinely, it was really getting to me, and I thought I can't, if I'm going to do this job, and if I'm going to actually get this ship on the right course, I can't be feeling, I was taking it too personally, and I just thought taking myself out of it was probably the right thing to do at that point. But I just would urge people, please think before you type on the keyboard. Social media is the best thing and the worst thing. And I always, if you say it to my face, that's fine. but if you wouldn't sit in the same room as me and say that, then please don't type it. And it's not me, actually. I don't so much worry about me. It's my staff. It's my team. They just don't deserve it. It's not fair. So
everybody's trying their best. And it comes back, everybody bandies around. Be kind. Be nice. Absolutely. And then it gets forgotten very, very quickly. So listeners, and I'm not saying any of you.
No, I'm not. Yeah, no, I'm not.
But I also think that we are all quite, if we see something, we don't necessarily call it out. And I'm as guilty for this, that we don't actually go, do you know what? It's not okay to say that. It's not okay to do that. So maybe we all just need to pull together and kind of go, actually, we're all human. Nothing's perfect, but let's trust that we're working towards the same goal. And if people haven't got anything nice to say, then they don't say anything at all.
And on that, Nicole, I would also add, if it's constructive and it can help, please, go through the appropriate channels, tell us, email us, let us know. We genuinely want that feedback. We want to listen to members. We want to improve things as much as we possibly can, but it does need to be constructive. That's a caveat.
and also that, the riders working groups are there as the voice for the members. Like the members have a voice. There is a chance to get their feedback, their ideas there, because there are so many amazing skills within our membership that there are going to be great ideas.
Oh, you're telling me? No, there are. And I think we need it to be clearer, actually, out so people know that channel to get in touch with. Who do I go to? Who is that rider working group? How do I get in touch? And I think that's something that, actually, do you know what, in terms of communication, we need to be better at, and we need to make clearer. So that's my takeaway.
There we go. Just another job to add onto your list.
Another one to add. Yeah, absolutely.
No, look, it is a really important point, listeners. We hope that you've enjoyed a bit of an insight. This show has been really about setting the scene, and to be honest, being honest about what the situation is, where the driving force is looking to go, and how people can have their input as well. And we come back to that transparency that we spoke about at the start of the show, the transparency into British Eventing and the plans for this year. Very much this show is going to be a chance for Helen, for you to have your voice, but also for us to really share some very, very exciting eventing with the membership as well.
And on that, Nicole, I'm sorry, I've got to butt in at that point. Badminton and Burley back this year, 5 stars, amazing. And actually, Badminton Burley, we've got Bramham back. We've already talked, obviously, about Bramham with the 80, but from a 4-star perspective, absolutely fantastic. And it's the World Equestrian Games this year. How exciting is that? We've got WEG this year. We've got, we're on the build up to the Paris cycle 2024, and this year we've also got the Junior and Young Rider European Championships on home soil, on UK turf at Hartbury. I think the ponies back, going back to Poland. But there is so much to look forward to. And just remember, we are current world, Olympic and European champions. So we're in a good place.
Pressure's on for this year. But it makes a great point. We saw at Blenheim last year, you know, crowds came out in their absolute droves to support an amazing event, and we hope that we'll see it this year. Badminton back, Burley back, as you say, Bramham, and so many other big events too. We actually have been speaking about it quite a bit on the EquiRatings Eventing Podcast over the last couple of months, the importance of those big 5 stars. And Piggy March was pretty frank in her summary of it, very much, you know, it cannot be underestimated all through the levels and the knock-on effect that not having them has had. So hopefully, absolutely, we have got a very, very exciting 2022 ahead of us. And listeners, you will be coming along for the ride with us. So on next month's British Eventing Show, we will be looking forward to the season ahead. And April's show will be I think we are down for a cross-country special. Be safe, learning about course design. Helen, I think we're going to pick your brains on that as well.
I love that one.
But look, so there will be that educational piece in there as well for you listeners. But we really hope that you will get behind what is a really, really big year for the sport, because ultimately we all have the same aim. We want eventing to flourish. We want it to grow. We all have the passion. So let's all put our collective passion together and make it brilliant and enjoy it. And I think that's the thing. Enjoy it. Helen, thank you. It is a pleasure. I'm looking forward to this. I feel like we've got a lot that we can cover this year. And it's been nice to kind of sit down and set the scene and to talk about it very honestly. So thank you for your honesty as well, because that's important for both of us and something that we really feel passionately about. Listeners, we hope you've enjoyed the very first episode of the British Eventing Show on the EquiRatings Eventing Podcast. We will be back very, very soon with more for you, so do stay tuned. But a big thank you to Helen and a big thank you to you for listening.